afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is going to be a reading for Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Rising positions for the new moon in Libra happening on October the 6th. So this new moon is very interesting because the Sun is already in Libra. So with the Sun and the Moon both in Libra conjuncting one another, it's going to really be a time where we find that the internal and the external self are trying to come into some sort of balance or alignment. So really highlighting areas where there's imbalance, right? And in addition to that, the Libra aspect of this new moon is really putting an emphasis on relationships, friendships, love, connections, problem solving, peacekeeping, all kinds of dynamics. And so really there's going to be this idea of focusing on the future. What kind of future are you envisioning and setting a foundation for? Are you setting your sights on your goals? Now, the other interesting factor happening right at the same time is that Mercury is retrograde. So that's really going to throw in a curveball here where you're also going to be reminded of things from the past. So your past could start catching up with you. You might be feeling some confusion, the need for closure, or the need to heal old wounds. And so it's a very complex and spiritually powerful time where lots of alignment, balancing, and sort of a shift in focus, a bit of a tug of war between the past and the future. And we're going to get started here to see how this is going to impact Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Rising. What are the major themes here for Scorpio as they move through their week with the energy of this new moon in Libra? What is the message here for Scorpio as they move through their week? Got one card. Let's see if anything. Oh, one more. Okay. Let's see. This is interesting. You've got the moon card here for the new moon in Scorpio, which is you. So let's see here. Working through your fears, Scorpio, and take time to breathe out. So working through your fears and needing time to breathe. Those certainly seem to go with each other. That really makes me think, this is the descending moon and new moon in Scorpio. That really makes me think this dissemination. You're pulling things apart. You're trying to understand things. And as you do that, that could trigger some fears that you need to work through, Scorpio. So I feel like you're trying to understand things on a deeper level. You might be doing some shadow work, which is triggering some fear. I mean, there's no shortage of fear going around in the world today. So taking time to breathe out and to work through your fears, as opposed to letting your fears rule you. I think that's sort of the other side of that. When you work through your fears, you do so in a way that allows the fears not to be driving, okay? And taking a time to breathe out really makes me think, you need to exhale. Just as we inhale, we exhale. And taking the time to exhale is a moment of stillness where you can sort of breathe, right? Let's see what will support Scorpio as they go through their week, potentially uncovering some fears and finding the need to breathe. Oh, interesting. Surrender. And look at that image. Doesn't that say breathe out? That sort of looks like a deep exhalation. The card says surrender, be receptive, release the need to control, listen to your heart, and remain present. Interesting. And as I was sort of introducing the reading to you, I was sort of talking about this tug of war between the past and the future. And really the present is the only thing that's real. So we need to stay in the present and focus on the future with respect to establishing a foundation, rather than allowing the future to be dictated by the past, which is sort of like an autopilot response that we jump into sometimes when we're planning. We assume that just because it went one way in the past, it's going to go that way again. So this is interesting. The need to surrender sort of really reminds me of the essence of this card, of breathing out and, working through your fears. is a sort of surrender as well, releasing the need to control, listen to your heart, and remain present. Very interesting messages here for you, Scorpio. Let's jump into the tarot cards to get the rest of the story here and see what is coming up for Scorpio. We'll just shut the window as they go through their week. Okay, interesting themes here for Scorpio. I wonder what you're working on here, Scorpio. I wonder what you're disseminating exactly. What are you looking at? Are you looking at your past? Is that why you're being asked to remain present? Or are you worrying about the future, which is creating some fear? Okay. Okay, Scorpio. Yeah, I can see why things seem like eliciting fear response right now. Leap of faith may be needed here. That idea of receptive, surrender, I can see that. I can see that that is necessary here for you. We've got the Queen of Swords on the bottom of the deck in reverse, which suggests uncertainty about yourself. You're not sure what defines you anymore, Scorpio. Things have shifted, and that is where the surrender needs to happen here. It's interesting. What I see so far for you is that you've got this dynamic where you're trying to understand your own intentions and you're trying to find the balance between ego and spirit, right? And the thing challenging you here is that you're starting to withdraw. You're slowly starting to withdraw from healing this situation for yourself. There seems to be something that needs to heal here. I feel like you are coming into some truth about intention that you hold with respect to how you face challenges in the physical world, how your confidence in the material, in matter, how your physical sense of belonging and security motivates you. How are you using your intention to create change in your life? I feel like these are the questions you're asking yourself, and you're getting answers that are sort of leaving you in a place where you're at a loss of how to accept what you're finding out. You know, it's like you're being shown the illusions. You're seeing the truth and you're resistant to it. You're not receptive to what you're finding out. And so you're withdrawing. Instead of facing it and sort of addressing it, you're withdrawing into a state of isolation where you're reflecting on things, and you know that there's a bit of self-delusion happening here, and it's ending. This truth is coming to end your self-deluded sort of ideas about yourself. This is a reading that seems to be very much about Scorpio and Scorpio, which is, I think, why you got the New Moon in Scorpio card, because this is not about external factors. This is about you, Scorpio. This is not external. This is a situation that's very much internal. So you're being asked to surrender to yourself. You're being asked to surrender to a new vision of yourself. Okay? And other people seem to sort of see the outer shell that you have created as your mask, or your external persona, if you will, which is one that is very well developed. And it's a shell, it's a mask. So what lies beneath that, Scorpio? What lies beneath that? What lies beneath that is actually an individual who has an inner narrative of wanting to get out from under an oppressive situation. And so it's really interesting to see the inner dialogue and the outer manifestation being so different. And so that could be an area that needs some alignment, that your outer expression is of someone who has sort of immense prosperity and very comfortable. This card also makes me sort of think of being in a comfort zone. So when people look at you, they think comfortable, set, you know, that Scorpio is all set. They're set. Their life is set. They're very prosperous and self-reliant, and they know who they are. But it's a lonely place. It's a lonely, lonely place. And inside you, Scorpio, it's sort of like you just would rather bury your head in the sand because you just want to get out from underneath some of the burdens that you have sort of laying over you. Do you know what I mean? It's like you feel like you're left holding all the responsibilities and you just want to pass the buck, if you will, right? It's interesting. You might even be projecting this onto other people because it's so uncomfortable. So it's interesting. This could also sort of gives me the feeling that you're also trying to get stuff out of your space. Like you could be decluttering, you could be sort of like emptying your closets and looking at things and saying these things no longer serve me. This is part of I feel like your heart and your intuition pushing you to surrender. And sometimes the response we feel initially is that we need to clean our physical space. Like sometimes when our inner self needs to free itself from a burden, the first thing we can do sometimes is we look to our physical environment and we start cleaning it up. So I feel like you're doing both of those kind of things right now. You're looking for a way out, maybe by escape, and you're also in a place where you could just be trying to tidy up, clean up loose ends, clear out things that no longer serve you, Scorpio. I feel like you're shifting and it's interesting. It's like you've been given this ability to sort of create some change and face physical challenges head on. And I feel like whatever opportunity came along to sort of put you in this position is launching you towards this unveiling of truth, right? Like you're seeing behind a veil of illusions, right? You're seeing the truth behind some things that are not true. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing past the curtain. You're seeing through the veil. So many different ways to sort of express that. In the recent past, I feel like there was something that happened that was a bit manipulative. Okay, so some manipulation was going on in the past. Now, you may have been the one inadvertently doing the manipulating, or maybe purposefully trying to be strategic, not knowing that it would sort of result in some sort of manipulation in the end. Or maybe someone was manipulating you, kind of being dishonest with you and trying to be strategic. Regardless, an element of trust was broken, okay? Some sort of trust was broken in the past, and someone may have been trying to get away with something as a result, okay? So that created a dynamic that caused you to feel like an immense amount of sort of confusion about your own intentions and wondering, where are you operating from? Are you operating from a very sort of physical reality perspective where the ego is driving? Or are you operating from a place of spirituality where you're tapping into your intuition and your higher self is driving? Do you know what I mean? And when that dilemma presented itself, it's almost like you just decided, I really need to sort of sever from these energies. It's almost like you made a decision to say, if I feel any sort of manipulation happening here, I need to disconnect from it because it's affecting my intentions as I go forward. And it's interesting because I feel like in the upcoming future, you're going to be in a place where it's almost like you're going to deny relationships. You're almost going to put limits and boundaries. And maybe that's going to be healthier because of this past lesson in sort of some manipulation or deception that took place here. So it seems like in the future, you're going to be more diligent about putting boundaries in place and putting limits on things. But I wonder, Scorpio, if that is going to further your sort of denial of these situations that need to change, or if potentially in response to these situations, you're going to end up using sort of a new way of handling limits and boundaries and sort of using different criteria to assess when limits and boundaries are necessary. You might even be considering putting limits and boundaries on yourself, because I feel like the thing that is sort of your desire and your fear is to take a leap of faith and to sort of trust that there is a plan. I feel like this is in doubt. I feel like you're starting to doubt that. And that's why we see the devil card here. I think that what's happened here is the idea that something happened in the past that was not above board. It was manipulative. It felt strategic. It felt like someone was trying to get away with something. And that really affected you. It affected your ability to sort of manifest your path and to clear obstacles, to clear challenges as they were presented to you. And it sort of threw this whole thing into question where you were like, am I the drama? Is it me? Did I cause that? And it sort of got you wondering whether or not your intentions are coming from a place of ego or from a place of spirit. You know what I mean? And the thing is, there's no judgment here, Scorpio. There's no judgment. Our ego just wants to survive, and it just wants us to survive. So it tends to make us feel afraid most of the time because fear keeps us safe. You know, it keeps us exactly where we are. It keeps us locked in a cage, as you know, but it doesn't allow things to happen to you. You know what I mean? Like when you're afraid, you avoid risk. And taking a risk or taking a leap of faith seems to be the thing that you are afraid of right now. That's the thing that you fear, you know, like, but yet you want it. You want it. You want to be able to change paths using your intuition. You want to get away from that ego-driven, very changing matter perspective, and that it's insatiable, right? Like the ego, it just constantly craves pleasure. And anytime that pleasure is at risk, it will turn up the fear so that you stay where you are, creating pleasure for your ego. And I think that doing that created some situations where you found that there was manipulation, deception, things that just weren't above board. And that threw you in this whole place of just feeling completely closed off and like everything was falling apart around you that you thought was true. And then you realized, like you saw behind the curtain. You saw the person pulling the levers behind the curtain. You know what I mean? And it wasn't what you thought. And it kind of made everything feel very disillusioned. And as a result, you wanting to put in some limits and boundaries but it's like you're doing it to protect yourself. These boundaries and limits were put into place from a perspective of fear. And I think that's why you're getting the messages of take time to breathe, work through your fears, and surrender. Because there is an aspect of you that's resisting. There's a lot of cards here in reverse, Scorpio, and I think that you're resisting and putting limits through, it's a response of fear. It's a response of, I don't want this to ever happen again. I don't want anyone to manipulate me or misadvise me or sort of not be above board with me, like and it caused so much uncertainty. It caused a lot of uncertainty, and it was almost a situation where you realized that the only way to go through it was to go take the path that was unfamiliar. And I feel like you did that, but at the same time, you just want to bury your head in the sand. You don't want to look at this, right? You don't want to look at this. I think that you ultimately just want to be in balance, but at what cost? At what cost, Scorpio? It's an interesting time here for you. And I think that this new moon is really going to highlight for you the idea that self-sacrifice and sort of giving to others are two different things. Right? When you're in self-sacrifice mode, you're not balanced. You're giving because you don't feel worthy, right? When we give to people please, we give because we're trying to make an exchange of love. We're saying, if I give you this, will you love me? Please, like, will you love me if I give you this? Promise, because then I'll do it. I'll sacrifice a part of myself so that you love me. And it's an interesting thing. But when we, I feel like you're trying to put boundaries in place and limits in place so that sacrifice won't happen again. You know, you're like, well, if I put boundaries around myself and limits, then that won't happen again. But then you end up putting yourself in a cage. You end up putting yourself so far away. You become alienated and isolated because of fear. So we need to work through those fears, not bury our head in the sand, and not just withdraw because we can't accept the truth that is being shown to us. It's interesting. These boundaries and limits that you're putting in place here, I feel are going to restrict you with respect to your ability to give and receive. I feel like as much as you don't want to be a people pleaser and self-sacrifice, in this I see that there might be this idea that you might deny the needs of others as a result, and you might deny your own needs. This is really a time where it's going to be important to release the need to control outcome. Okay, I understand here that something happened that was deceptive and manipulative, and it sort of had an impact on this whole timeline. It caused a lot of uncertainty and triggered some fear for you about the intention of others. That's what it seems like here. But I feel like it would be a missed opportunity here for you to bury your head in the sand and stay isolated and sort of up in your cage on that pedestal, because there is some movement that needs to happen here. I see the King of Pentacles and I see the Fool. So that says to me that you're on a journey and that you're working on creating something. So it's going to be an interesting week for you to see how far you can get creatively without taking down some of those barriers that you've put up. You know what I mean? Like, you are concerned with how other people see you, Scorpio. You're still a little concerned about that. And I feel like releasing control could be part of that too. You know what I mean? In that you're never going to please everyone. There's always going to be a critic somewhere that doesn't agree with what you're doing. And if that's what happened in the past, I feel like it was more than just a critic. I feel like something happened in a situation where there was trust, because it did have a big impact and it caused enough uncertainty that it feels like it would have had to have been kind of familiar in order to have that effect, if that makes any sense. Interesting. Okay, let's see what your final guidance is here to close out your reading, Scorpio. What is the final guidance for Scorpio as they go through this time where ego and fear seem to be at the helm, and as a result, the body is going into retreat? Okay, I guess just this one. Let's see what card you got. Spaciousness. What do I no longer need? Yeah, the idea of getting rid of stuff. Help me to release whatever people, places, or things drain my vital essence. Show me what will fill me with enthusiasm and joy. Yeah, making room. Making room for things to go and things to come in. Things to come in that serve you, things that don't serve you to go. And I feel like that is really well expressed by your inner dialogue here with the Ten of Wands, in the sense that, you know, you're just looking to come out of something and sort of shed the things, shed the burdens. You want to put those 10 wands down. You want to put your burdens down. So anything that's no longer serving you and anything draining your essence, it's got to go. And you want to be filled up with joy and enthusiasm. And it's interesting because this idea of working through your fears, I feel like working through your fear is a way to create space. You know, working through your fears is a way to create space. Surrendering, releasing the need to control. You know, listen to your heart, remain present, and be receptive. So sort of being open. And how can you be open if there's no space, right? Very interesting, Scorpio. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Now, if this has resonated and you'd like a personal reading, my email's in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and watching. And we'll see you again very soon for another reading. Sending you lots of love and light, my friends.